Okay, so share screens. Yay. So this is the study guide section on the website. All of the information from the previous classes that we've had on circle casting are already up and on the website, just so everybody knows. So, because circle casting tends to be one of the very first things that people learn, because circle casting is very associated with Wicca, and Wicca is probably one of the most easily accessible spiritualities that is pagan in the United States. Wicca usually is what people think of when they think of paganism and witchcraft, even though Wicca is extremely new. It's a brand new European form of witchcraft, and it is definitely not the only type of witchcraft out there. There's thousands of different types of witchcraft out there, but a lot of the books that are available at metaphysical bookstores, especially in the US, tend to focus on Wicca. And usually one of the very first things you learn when reading and studying Wicca is casting a circle. So I want to ask before we start, what is a sacred circle to you? And what do you know about it already?
Not much. Maybe just that it's a safe space that you make yourself to be able to cast the spells and have that space. That's really all that I can think of.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you. Hi, Rosalie. So awesome. We just started. So the very first thing that I asked is, what do you already know about circle casting, and what is a sacred circle to you? What have you learned about it already outside of this academy? Oh, don't be sorry. You're good. We just started. So, what is a sacred circle? So, Wicca. Wicca is a new pagan spirituality that started in Europe, predominantly in the UK. The person that is known for starting Wicca is a man named Gerald Gardner. He started Gardnerian Wicca, which is usually coined as the very first form of Wicca. There are other forms of Wicca that were started all over Europe, and new branches of Wicca that have started in the US, as well as all over the world. But Gerald Gardner started one of the very, very first forms of Wicca. It is very new. Pretty sure he started it in the 50s. I might be wrong by 10 or so years. I don't know if it was, I forget if it was the 50s, the 40s, or the 60s. I have to look that up. But Gerald Gardner started it between 1945 to 1960, somewhere around there. It's very new compared, it's the newest form of paganism. But within Wicca is where we get a lot of the modern forms of circle casting, the modern European forms of circle casting. We are going to discuss and talk about how other circles are cast throughout different forms of paganism. Circle casting has been used for thousands of years throughout many different forms of circle casting that have originated with tons of different indigenous tribes, as well as different pagan groups all over the world. A lot of circle casting is open practice, which is why we are able to discuss, talk, learn about it, and cast our own circles, is because most of circle casting is open practice, depending, of course, on the culture that you're taking it from. But most of circle casting is meant to help protect people and help to spread magic throughout different cultures. And it was meant to be spread from culture to culture, and it was never meant to be a closed practice. There are definitely cultures that would like to keep it a closed practice, and we are not going to learn about those forms of circle casting. But like I said, a lot of them are open practice as well. And in this class and throughout this course, we will be casting our own circles, creating our own incantations, and learning about circle casting from all over the world. So the very first one that we are going to go over is circle casting practiced in Wicca. The reason that in Wicca you cast a circle is to protect you from outside energy and to hold and train and grow the energy before releasing it. So a lot of times when you are performing a ritual, casting a spell, doing any form of the craft, usually part of the ritual, part of the craft, part of the practice is to take energy. A lot of times you are taking energy from earth, air, fire, water, and spirit and holding it within your circle and changing it. I call it training the energy, but there are lots of different names for it. But you are holding the energy within your space to grow, train, change that energy, and to then release it back into the universe with intention. And to do that, you need a form of space, a form of sacred space to hold that energy inside of. It is a safe place to come back to. So a lot of times people can get very overwhelmed, whether it is just with the chaos of the day, the chaos of the year, the chaos of life, or even just a lot of people believe in empathic ability and being able to soak in a lot of the emotions, stress, and overwhelming situations of other people and of the universe. And casting a circle, you can decide what type of energy gets to enter that circle, and therefore it becomes a safe place for people who feel as though they need a place where they get to choose the energy that enters that space. It protects you from everyone else's energy who's in the circle. So a lot of times when you are practicing with your coven, with whoever you like to practice witchcraft with, if you are practicing with anybody other than just yourself, it gives you a space to protect you from everyone else's energy that's in the circle. So when casting a circle, you also cleanse the space and cleanse yourself. And you also cast a form of energy around your own aura. And in doing that, it can help protect you from whether or not you believe in taking on other people's energy through empathic work, or even just whatever intention they have going on might not be the intention that you have going on. And so you want to protect yourself from whatever their intention may be. And to harness the circular energy of the universe. So a lot of times, like I said in the first one, you are trying to harness the energy of whatever it is. So like I said, a lot of times it is earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Sometimes you are harnessing the energy of a different dimension. Sometimes you are harnessing the energy of intention. Sometimes you are harnessing empathic energy, energy from divination, energy from a lot of different things. And this gives you a place to harness and put that energy. Because sometimes we don't just want to take in the energy from the universe and place it inside of our own aura. Sometimes that's a lot. We want to take the energy and place it into a sacred space where we can hold it and do things with it without making it a part of our own aura. And then once again, the last one, like I keep talking about, you are to harness the energy of the elements. So when you cast a circle, a lot of times, for those of you who have seen circle casting performed in the Wiccan religion before, especially Wiccan religions that developed or stemmed from Gardnerian Wicca, a lot of times you are calling in the directions. So even if you've seen witchcraft performed in movies, a lot of times Gardnerian Wicca is where they take that from, probably just because there's a lot of books on it. So it's probably the easiest form to learn about for like a movie or a TV show. But they'll say things like, hail to the watchtowers of the south, element of fire, we call upon you for your passion, for your motivation, for your inspiration, and welcome to our circle, or we call you into our circle. Hail and welcome is a lot of times what you will hear. That's also a very standard for Wiccan circles when you do public rituals and things like that, or when you watch rituals online, you'll hear something like that. And that is to harness the energy of the elements and of the spirit, because it is believed within Gardnerian Wicca that calling in the energy is a way to set your intention. It is a way to let yourself, to let the universe know, and to help embrace the ideas of those elements to help bring that energy into your circle. And so a lot of times you will hear incantations used to, such as the one that I just described, to help bring intentional energy into your circle. Sacred circles are used for celebrating Sabbath holidays, for spells, potions, empowering your divination tools, for cleansing, things such as herbs, crystals, wands, bottles, talismans, pendulums. It's casting a circle is used for meditation. As I said before, it can help you to create a space where only the energy that you allow in ends up getting in, depending on whether or not that's what you believe, or that is the practice that you are on, or the spiritual path that you have chosen. But it makes it easier to meditate if you are not bombarded with a lot of intrusive thoughts and a lot of energy from a million different places. And so casting a circle can help with that. It also helps with astral projection, Reiki, chakra cleansing, all of those things. So, does anybody have any questions about sacred circles from the Gardnerian Wiccan tradition so far? Awesome. So, we are going to go over casting your own circle. So today we are really focusing, maybe not today, it depends on how class goes, but for the first part of this class, we are really focusing on Gardnerian Wicca and how to cast a circle within that tradition. The reason that I start with that one is because it is the most commonly used amongst modern day Wiccan practitioners. Gardnerian Wicca is the most commonly used practice amongst them. It is not my favorite. I started out as a Gardnerian witch. That is the very first thing that I ever started out as. It is probably the first thing that a lot of people start out as, because it is the most well-known, so it's the most easy to access information about. It is also an extremely open practice. Like I said, it was created by a dude in the 40s / 50s / 60s. It was created very recently. And so Gerald Gardner, a lot of the stuff that Gerald Gardner created stems from open practices. Gerald Gardner is also very, very good at giving you references and resources for where he got his information. So if you read one of Gerald Gardner's books, he tells you where he got all of this. A lot of the circle casting that he works on stems from open practices within ancient Egypt, as well as Celtic practices, as well as Italian strega witchcraft, which the circle casting aspect, as well as the divination aspect of Strega witchcraft, is all very open practice. And it also stems from a lot of the numerology, theology, and symbology found within the Middle East. And the Middle Eastern practices are one of the most open practices in the world. It is why when you learn about numerology, everything you learn about numerology is probably based on Arabic numerology. It is the one Middle Eastern paganism. They wanted to spread it. It was a celebratory thing. Their spirituality was never something that was closed. It wasn't something that was like pushed on people either. But when you would trade ships, a lot of the times, a lot of trading throughout the Middle East and Europe was one of the very first places that we traded with, was the Middle East. And Middle Eastern practices were shared on trade ships. They were shared during celebrations. They were shared during holidays. They were shared during feasts. They were shared everywhere. Middle Eastern paganism is one of the most common practices. That's where you get tarot cards. Tarot cards started in the Middle East. That's where you get a lot of the traditions from Gardnerian Wicca, is all from the Middle East. It's where you get a lot of your numerology. Astrology all started in the Middle East. Tropical astrology is based on Middle Eastern astrology. It's very sad what happened when the Islamic religion took over, and a lot of those practices and theologies got lost, and we attribute them to Europe. We attribute everybody, when they talk about astrology, you know, they say Greek astrology, when it started in Iran and Syria and Afghanistan and Lebanon. And a lot of that is because colonization, it's because of religious prosecution. But anyway, a lot of Gerald Gardner's practices are all from open practices within the Middle East, Egypt, as well as Celtic practices throughout the UK and Norway. A lot of Norse mythology goes in there as well. And Gerald Gardner is very good at giving sources and information to where he got all of his information, unlike a lot of other writers who like to pretend that they made it up. Gerald Gardner is not like that. Gerald Gardner has his own issues. That is not one of them. So, casting your own circle. You want to make sure that you're in a safe space. When I say that, it is, it's basically just that you want to make sure that we all know that practicing witchcraft is not accepted and loved by all humans. I don't know why. I do know why. I'm kidding, but it should be. Anyway, you want to make sure
you're intimidated by the badassery,
right?
You know, because it's mostly like science.
It is
psychology of the devil,
right? Because people don't understand what witchcraft is. There's a big stigma against it. You want to make sure that you are in this place where you feel completely comfortable doing whatever the hell you want to do. Because as part of your ritual, you want to feel free to call in the directions really loudly, to hail to the north and the south and the east, and fire and earth and air loudly and proudly. And you want to make sure that's something you are able to do. If you feel like you are in a space where you aren't fully able to do that, and you're trying to be really quiet and you are trying to not get caught, it makes things just less awesome. I'm not saying it's going to mess with your magic at all. There are no rules within Wicca. There are no rules at all. A lot of people talk about the rule of harm none. That's not necessarily a rule. That's not necessarily something that all people follow. I think it's a great thing to think about. Not harming people is a good plan. But there are no, like, you know, you're not going to go to hell. There is no hell. There's nothing bad that's going to happen to you. Some people believe in karma. Some people don't. Some people believe that it'll come back at you threefold. Some people don't. It is up to you and your practice and your path. Do I believe that you shouldn't hurt people? Yeah, I do. But I don't believe that anybody should be forced to follow any certain path. You pick your own path. And whatever makes sense to you is awesome and beautiful and amazing. And converting people and forcing people to follow commandments and rules is not my jam. And it is not the jam of paganism and of witchcraft. So finding a place where you can completely be yourself, completely believe and embrace whatever energies and powers that you want to is very important. Gathering your materials. The reason this is so important is because usually when you cast a circle, you should stay within the circle, just because once you have put all your boundaries up, you've lit all your candles, you've done all of the things that you feel necessary to do, it can kind of mess with your state of mind. It can mess with the energy that you're feeling. Once you have casted your circle, it's kind of a really beautiful feeling that you get. You can kind of just live in the moment and feel all of the energy of the moment that being in your circle gives you. And if you have to like get up and leave your circle because you forgot a lighter, or which by the way I've done so many times, or because you forgot half your materials, the vibe is off. And then once you come back, you're all discombobulated and you don't feel the same energy that you felt before. Sometimes even in a lot of people's spiritual practices, they believe that if they leave the circle, that all the energy can get out or in. So you have to like recast it. Also that if you leave the circle, that a lot of the empathic energy can then get in, or that it will mess with your spell in some way. There's a lot of different theories on this. I encourage you to read a lot of books by Jared Gardner, because there's about 400 different theories about what happens if you cast a circle and then you just walk out without. Yeah, go ahead.
I was told by a friend that sometimes, like, you know how when you start the circle and then you realize, fuck, I forgot something. I was told sometimes that's the universe challenging you to how much you actually want this. And it makes you get more creative and give a new perspective on what you're supposed to be doing.
I love that.
It's pretty much a sign that you're not either ready for this or you're missing something else besides just like a lighter or a rock. Like you're missing something major.
Yes. That's also a wonderful theory. I love that too. Like I said, there are so many. I was always told that if you break the boundaries of the circle, that you are releasing all of the beautiful energy that you just worked really, really hard to obtain and to invoke and to pull into your circle, and now it's just gone. But not everybody believes that. Like I said, do your own research, figure out what you do believe, try it out. I also encourage this. There are no mistakes. Like you're not gonna like summon a devil or anything. Like we don't believe in that shit. So try it. Cast a circle and walk out. See what happens. I have noticed that I feel weird. I have noticed that the energy changes, that it doesn't feel the same anymore, that suddenly I feel overwhelmed or weird or stressed. And that could be psychology. It could be because so many people have told me to never do that, that now I feel like I've broken a rule, like I did something wrong, and it's anxiety because of that, or it's anxiety because the energy shifted.
It's like when all the kids in that class just go, ooh.
Yes. So yeah, make sure that the time of day and the day of the week are correct depending on what you're doing with your circle. So some people believe, especially this comes from a lot of Norse mythology, that the day of the week is extremely important. Like, because the days of the week were not only named after gods and goddesses, which I don't believe, and this is just me personally, I am an atheistic pagan. I do not believe in gods or goddesses. I believe that they are beautiful ideologies, and that because so many people have believed in these ideologies for so long, that we gave these ideologies power and energy, and that the names mean something. that the energy behind the names and ideas and stories mean so much, because those stories have been told for thousands of years. And that energy that comes from saying those gods' names is beautiful, because your ancestors have been telling those stories for thousands of years, and those stories and names have power and energy. But like, there was no Thor in the sky that throws lightning. Like, he doesn't exist, but his name brings power, because of the stories and legends and ideologies behind them. Anyway, I do a whole class on that. So, but as we know, Thursday is Thor's Day. It was named after the god Thor. Friday, depending on what you believe, there are different ideas behind Friday, but Freya's Day. And Sunday is the sun's day. And so on. And so those stories have been told for such a long time. They have power, they have energy. Ancestors have been saying those stories and the names of those gods for thousands of years, and they hold energy and power. So if you are trying to do a spell that is tied to the sun, it's tied to fire, it's tied to motivation and inspiration, and it's tied to spark, and like the spark of energy that you get when you do something extremely exciting, it is tied to adrenaline, it is tied to action and purpose, you might want to do that on Sunday, because for a very long time, that day has been associated with fire and the sun and Ra and the sun gods all over the world. And so maybe you want to do that spell on Sunday to help draw that energy into your spell work. Also, though, something I want to bring up about that, if you are doing a spell and the spell book that you are using says, do this spell on Sunday, but like you work a 12-hour shift every Sunday, do it on Saturday. It's okay. It's fine. Just if that's what I'm saying. So if you know that the reason that spell is supposed to be done on Sunday is because you are drawing energy from fire and action and motivation and inspiration, just like I said, then bring other forms of that into your circle. So if your spell is about all of those things, but you can't do it on Sunday, so you can't bring that energy using the day of the week, use other things. Have 19 red candles. Have a statue of Ra. Have the sun gods there and with you, or have a statue of the sun, or a beautiful picture of a sunset. Draw in, or even sun water. I love sun water. Sun water is great. Or sun oil. Sun oil smells amazing. Or a giant pit of fire in the middle of your backyard. Draw in that energy in other ways, because there are millions of ways to draw in the energy of the sun. Sunday is not the only way to do that. So understanding the spell that you're doing, why they want it to be done on Sunday, and just substituting that. So the time of day, same deal. The reason they want you to do it at night is because you are drawing in the power of the moon. You are drawing in the powers of transition and phases and feminine energy and the tides and water and the ocean and spiritual awakening and the maiden, the mother, and the crone, if that's something that you like believe in. That is why. So bring that energy in whatever way you can. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is to just do the spell at night. But if you're unable to do the spell at night, bring in that energy in another way. So making sure you do that is important. Energy is important. Bringing in the powers of elemental energy is very important, especially in Gardnerian Wicca. Making sure your space isn't messy. This one is just because, for a few reasons. There are very practical reasons behind this. A lot of times for spiritual and circle casting work, you're going to be using incense and fire and candles. You don't want to set things on fire by having it be in a very, in a really messy space, because then there's more fire hazard and potential for bad things to happen. Logical reasons behind this. Also, if you're the type of person who just feels more clear of mind when there's not a gigantic mess around you, then casting a circle in a space where there's not a huge mess is going to help with that clarity of mind. If you thrive off of chaos energy and you like living in messes, which is valid completely, like I have a bit of chaos energy in me, totally, and then don't worry about that, just worry about the fire hazard part. And make sure that you don't start your house on fire. Very important. Also, you can solve this entire problem by doing it outside, because if you do it in the middle of the field, obviously it's not going to be messy. But once again, don't set the field on fire. So you want to create an altar, and we're going to go over how to do that. You want to create a physical circle out of something like salt, yarn, candles, or plants. Once again, if you are doing this outside, do not use salt. Do not salt the ground. We don't want to kill Mother Earth while we worship her.
You can use fertilizer or even like grass clippings. That's what I've used.
Yeah, totally. Or even if you're outside, I really like using yarn or plants.
Ooh, that would be so cool, like raking the fall leaves for a sour.
Yes, that is such a good idea. Exactly. Using leaves, like different colored leaves, to make a really pretty circle around you.
Christmas lights.
Yes. Using dandelions. I've used those before. Obviously, you don't want to like pick too many things off the ground, but if you happen to have a bunch of dandelions in your yard, maybe picking a few and laying them out into helping your circle connect is a cute idea too. Using potted plants I've seen done, which is super cute. Anything you can think of that really helps draw the energy into your circle that you are going for. It's a great idea. You guys can read the rest of this list super, super fast. I have to pee. I'll be right back. I know I always do this. I'm so sorry. My bladder hates me. Okay, I am so sorry. Hi. So, cool. Having people sit in designated areas. This is something that I feel like a lot of people forget, even people who have been practicing Gardnerian Wicca for a really long time. The place that you sit within the circle, if you are doing it with multiple people or even by yourself, remember that you're calling in the directions. Part of Gardnerian Wicca, a huge part of it, is that the directional planes in the world have meaning. North represents earth, east represents air, south represents fire, and west represents water. Knowing that and knowing the different types of energy that those bring, such as water bringing the energy of emotion, air bringing the energy of analytical thought, earth bringing the energy of material realm, like the material realm and everything that exists within our world, such as wealth and housing and cars and school and job and, you know, anything that exists in the material plane. And that fire represents action and motivation. Knowing that and knowing the type of intention that you're trying to bring with your craft, sit in the spot and in the direction. So like, if you are really trying to work on a lot of emotions that you're feeling, if you are really trying to work on mental health and mental stability and a lot of intrusive emotions, sit in the west, and that'll help with the intention that you are trying to bring into your craft. If you are dealing with a lot of anxiety and a lot of analytical thought and trying a lot of introspection and looking at yourself and really trying to understand and comprehend a lot of the mental spaces that you have been in recently, sit in the east, and so on. Those directions have meaning. And even though Gardnerian Wicca is something that has only been practiced since the 50s or so, that's still a long time. And people have been drawing energy into those directions for a long time. Plus, like I said, Gerald Gardner got a lot of his information from the Middle East and from other practices, and using the directions, north, east, south, and west, as a form of energy for earth, air, fire, and water is something that has been done for thousands of years all over the world, throughout every continent on earth. So those places have energy, they have meaning, and they have history and ancestral magic. And using those is extremely beneficial. I encourage you to do so. And you can do that in other forms of life as well, not just casting a circle, but knowing. Let's say that I like to do walking meditations where I go on like a flower walk and I look at all the flowers, but I'm also trying to work on introspection and meditating while I walk. Walk to the west. If you are working on your emotional journey, walk west. If you are working on finding the motivation to exist, walk south. So, yeah. So cleansing your space. One thing we have to talk about, I have sage on here. We don't use white sage. Using white sage is a form of cultural appropriation because indigenous communities, for many, many reasons, such as over-harvesting, factory farming, as well as indigenous abuse and appropriation in an extremely negative way that has negatively impacted indigenous tribes and people from many different places in the world. That is a sacred herb that indigenous people have asked people who are not part of those tribes to stop using for many, many different factors and reasons. So we don't use it. You don't necessarily have to understand why. Just being respectful is extremely important. Understanding why is a great next step, and I encourage you to research that. Research the over-harvesting of sage, the factory farming of sage, as well as the way that using sage that is, how using white sage is affecting and harming indigenous communities. There are thousands of articles about it online. It is extremely available to you. But we don't use white sage. But there are hundreds of strains of sage that you are welcome to use. There is red sage and garden sage and green sage and pineapple sage and all kinds of things. And a lot of them grow in your backyard, especially if you live in Colorado. If you are somebody who lives in Colorado and you are in this class, pineapple sage as well as pineapple chamomile exist like in the sidewalk. and you can just go pick it and use it. It's great. And so does garden sage. Garden sage exists everywhere. It grows out of our sidewalks. Like I said, it grows in the alley. It also grows all over the mountains. But if you don't have access to that, it grows everywhere. It grows in your backyard. It grows everywhere. So using that is perfectly fine. Just make sure you're not using white sage.
And Dorian can tell you the difference.
Yes. If you come to one of our herbalism classes, Dorian can help you identify those plants. Also, there are tons and tons of slideshows on this website. I will show you where I explain to you what the difference is, how to find it, how to harvest it, how to use it. It's all in the herbalism section on this website.
You're so great.
Thank you. You can also use enchanted water, such as moon water or sun water, lavender spray, saltwater spray, cleansing incense. You can also, there's lots of things that aren't on here. You can use rosemary, you can use roses, you can use pretty much any dried herb. If you enchant it or even just cleanse it or even just have the intention behind using it for cleansing your space, there's not a lot of them that you shouldn't use. I would say some of the ones that maybe aren't going to be the best for cleansing are going to be things like I don't appreciate using sandalwood, because sandalwood is used for a lot of spiritual awakening work, and it's used for a lot of astral projection work. And if you are solely trying to cleanse, it can be a very overwhelming scent to cleanse with. Sandalwood, it like embraces all of your senses, and it is very potent. Same thing with using something like eucalyptus or using something like patchouli. Those are going to be very, very overwhelming. It's not going to feel like you're cleansed. It's going to feel more like all of your senses are screaming, which is great and used for other things, but maybe not cleansing your space. But like I said, a lot of herbs, if you cleanse them with the intention of using them for cleansing, a lot of them can be used. But the ones I have listed here are already something that have been used for generations throughout time for the purpose of cleansing ritual space and spiritual space. So, calling in the directions and the spirit using an incantation. So we're actually going to pause here. And we are going to do an activity. Number one, I feel like I've already talked a lot. Number two, this is one of my favorite activities to do during this class. So I'm going to tell you what to do. Now, when you share this and when we do this activity, please feel free to share in the chat. If you are in a space where you don't really want to talk, totally cool. Just share your activity in the chat. Completely fine. So here's what we're going to do. So, hang on. We are going to create our own incantations. I, for one, as somebody who has been going to rituals since I was born, get so sick and tired of the common hail to the watchtowers of the north, element of earth, we call you, bring your stability and wealth and prosperity, hail and welcome. I use it occasionally, but it's not, it's everybody uses it. Also, not everybody recites these words because they're in so many books, but nobody knows what they necessarily mean. What watchtower? What guardians? Hail to the guardians of the watchtower of the north. Like, what guardians and what watchtower? I know what they mean, and I will help explain what they mean. But if you don't know what it means, it's not going to bring as much intention. So writing your own incantation does bring tons more energy than reciting one that somebody else wrote. Feel free to recite Gerald Gardner's words. Totally cool. Like I said, I do it a lot, and I don't shame priestesses and other witches who do it. That's fine. But also, learning how to write your own incantations can really, really help bring specific intentional energy to your circle that is so much more than reciting somebody else's really powerful words. So that's what we're going to do today. So here are the elements. I am going to put into the chat right now. Maybe if it'll pop up for me. There we go. Okay. Earth is north. Fire is south. Oops. Air is east. And water is west. And center is spirit. I would love if everybody could write their own incantation for each element. It can be extremely short. It does not have to be long. It does not
Hey Alex, I gotta go. Sorry. I have
okay.
to finish dinner.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Have fun at dinner. Bye. So yeah, it can be really, really short. It can be like, 5 words if you want it to be, totally fine. But I want to see what kind of incantations we can come up with. Like I said, the example, the one that is used all the time, and the one that Gerald Gardner has written, as well as the one that is probably in most Wicca books that you've ever read, is the one that I just said. Hail to the guardians of the watchtowers of the east, element of air. We call on you for your intellect, and come, be here now, guide us on our journey, hail and welcome. That is the standard. Feel free to use that as an example. Here, if you guys all want to use, your phones or your laptops or whatever you're on to go to this website, to go to this part of the website, I'll put the link at the bottom. Here is the link to this section of the website. Remember that the password, you can copy and paste this in. That is the password to the website. So when you're saying your incantation, the reason that I'm having you go to this section on the website is when you say your incantation, you know what each element means and what it stands for. I give you a really big explanation of what earth symbolizes. And by the way, these are all ancient symbolisms from the Middle East. Most of these were, the very first place that they were found was on ancient runes throughout Iran, what we would call Iran now, and Syria, as well as Afghanistan and Lebanon, and throughout different places within the Middle East. My grandma used to talk to me all the time about how symbolism, all the symbolism from where I'm from, is now used as common day witchcraft, which I always thought was pretty cool because I'm a first generation American from the Middle East. So I always get really excited when I get to learn about my own culture and my own ancestors. Anyway, so this section of the website will tell you what every single element stands for. I wrote these in my own words, so this isn't necessarily like the end all be all. Like there's probably lots of other things that you could say about fire, but I wrote this, so but I've been practicing witchcraft for 28 years, so anyway, this will give you the symbolism of every single element. Go ahead and write your own incantations and write one for each element. And then we're going to share them. But if you would like to share them in the chat and you don't want to use your voice, that's totally fine. And if you would like to only share 2 elements, that's fine. I would love if you created one for every single one of the elements, but if not, that's completely fine. Don't worry about it. And yeah, let me know when you're done. I'm going to give everybody about 5 or 10 minutes, probably more like 10 minutes, and feel free to, well, everybody already has their camera off and they're muted. I was going to say feel free to turn your camera off and mute yourself. Anyway, I'm going to do that, and I'll come back in 10 minutes and everybody can share. Sound good? Any questions? Okay, cool. See you in 10 minutes. Is anybody ready to share? It's okay if you need more time. I was just wondering.
I have 1.5.
Awesome. Okay.
I've never even tried before, so it was a little, says the writer. But I wouldn't even, to be honest, I've never really, other than what's on the movies and stuff, I've never really heard ones, you know, done. So this could be horrible. So if it's horrible, you won't hurt my feelings, I promise.
It's not horrible. Nothing could make it horrible. Awesome, but that's okay. I'll give you a little bit more time so you can finish all of them.
Okay.
Okay. I love your incantations, Rosalie. Those are beautiful. Oh, I love it. Those are amazing. Ah, I love it. No, those were so perfect. So amazing. Those are beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing those. Oh, thank you. I love you. Oh, those are awesome. Thank you so much. You're an amazing student. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I could make it easier. And I feel like that a lot. I feel like a lot of the books that exist about Wicca, especially, it makes it seem like you have to follow this very, very strict guideline, that you have to repeat words, that you have to have very specific materials bought from very specific places. And that's just not true. And it also, in my opinion, defeats a lot of the meanings behind the pagan spirituality, because it's not about spending money and having very specific materials and very specific words and mantras and prayers and any of that. That all came due to colonization. It is about loving the earth and everything that exists within the universe, and giving thanks to the existence of the universe and to all the beautiful things and people and plants and animals that exist around us, and understanding more about the stars and the planets and the universe that exists all around us, and using your own words and using your own ways to call that energy into your circle, or to thank that energy just for existing, means so much more than reciting somebody else's words. And yeah, so thank you for saying that. Yay! Okay, go ahead and share, Amy. Okay. Oh, sorry. All I read was, okay, I have one. Aww. I love that. Yes. That's beautiful. That's such a beautiful one for water. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
It's the only one that I can think of at the moment.
I love that. No, that's beautiful. Yes. I think too, one thing that one of my high priestesses said that really stuck with me is that, not only is drinking water just good for you, just because we all could probably drink a lot more water for our health and for our metabolism and for just health in general. But when you think about the symbolism behind water, and that for centuries it's been used as a symbol for emotional growth, emotional healing, emotional transition, emotional guidance, drinking water literally, in a spiritual sense, in a pagan sense, in a witchcraft sense, helps to stabilize your mental health, because you are drinking the element of mental clarity, the element of emotional happiness, of emotional intent, of emotional significance, emotional transition, and all of those things. So drinking water is a form of witchcraft. So I don't know, for me that helped me drink a lot more water, because I was drinking it and I was like, yeah, I'm doing a spell to help with my depression by drinking water. Did you have one to share, Katrina? Please take your time. If you're not done yet, please take your time. I was just wondering.
I'm like multitasking. We're like decorating for Halloween and I'm listening. So I'm kind of just like listening.
That's okay. No worries. Cool. Okay. No, that's totally fine. Awesome. I love all of everybody's incantations were beautiful. So when you are casting your circle, feel free to use your own incantations and write your own. And writing your own incantations in general is such a beautiful experience when it comes to understanding the elements and understanding how they work and understanding the intention behind them and the guidance behind them and all of that. Writing your own incantations really helps with all of that in general. And with realizing what you really want your ritual and your spell to be about. And you can use a different incantation for every circle that you cast. If you are casting a circle with the intention of doing a spell to help you focus, and because you just haven't been able to focus a lot lately, then every single one of your incantations can be based on the intention of helping you focus. And or you can also just make up your own general ones that you want to use for every circle. That's totally fine too. So now that we have written our own, I'm going to tell you what the Watchtower means and what the Guardian of the Watchtower means. So it has been explained to me because, okay, number one, it is very difficult to find a book in which Gerald Gardner explains what the Watchtowers are and what the Guardians are. It is based on a lot of interpretation. If you've read, like, you have to read like 6 of his books, and then you can start to understand the interpretation of the Watchtower and of the Guardians of the Watchtower. But the way that it has been explained to me by different priestesses and just by different practitioners is that, so the Watchtower is a metaphorical structure. It is a metaphorical structure that helps to channel the energy of the West. The Guardian is the creature, the deity, the dimensional being that helps to take that energy and point it towards the planet Earth, or point it towards our dimension within the planet Earth. So the Watchtower channels the energy of emotion, and this interdimensional being is what helps to direct that energy towards our dimension. And once I started learning more about that, I realized that I really don't vibe with that. Like, I really don't fully believe in that there is a Watchtower or a structure in which the energy from emotions and the West is captured within, and a deity that takes that energy and guides it to our dimension. That's really cool. That's a very cool ideology. It's a very cool metaphorical thing to meditate on and to help you understand how this energy is pointed towards our dimension. But also, I kind of just believe in like I said before, like same thing with deities. I believe that because the West has been associated with water for so long, that ancestor after ancestor after ancestor, after hundreds and thousands of humans have been putting energy into the West and correlating it with water, that we have given the West, the Western overall direction of the planet Earth, we have given it a form of emotional energy. And because it has represented water and emotion for such a long time, that humans gave it this idea and this ideology of water. So it's a lot like what we believe intention does within witchcraft. If you hold the intention of something, so if you put intention into your wand, let's say you are creating a wand and you are creating this beautiful stick that you took from nature and you whittled it and you carved it and crafted it with the intention of it helping you with depression. And you took tons of stones and herbs that you have enchanted with the intention of helping you with depression, and you put it all together into this beautiful wand that is going to help you with a lot of emotional turmoil. And then that wand has a lot of beautiful energy that you have put into it. Well, the West, for thousands of years, has been a symbol for emotion and water. And hundreds of thousands of millions of people have been using the West to mean water and emotion. And if you believe in intention, well, that is the most intention that could ever exist, is taking generation after generation after generation after generation and putting all of this energy into a direction for so long that it has the most intentional ancestral magic that exists within it, because humans gave it that. And that's what I believe. And that is why I tend to enjoy making up my own incantations more than using this idea of the guardian and the watchtower. Yeah. So, oh, wait, we didn't finish. Okay, so now that we all have our incantations, that is what you will use to call in the directions. And then you calm your mind and you start your ritual. So, you will sit down, if you start from the beginning of this, you will pick a day to do your ritual based on intention and energy. Make sure your space isn't messy. Create your altar. Create a physical circle using whatever it is that you would like to use. Sit in the designated area based on the intention of your ritual. Cleanse your space using the herbs that you have decided to use, or the moon water or sun water or lavender spray or whatever you have decided to use, and cleanse your space. Call in the directions. The process of calling in the directions is just to stand facing that direction and say your incantation. Some people like to do things like, sometimes I will use my hand and make a pentagram in the air with my hand. Sometimes I will use an athame, which is a knife. Some people pronounce it athame. Athame always sounded better to me, but whatever. And you can use a wand, you can use an athame, you can use your fingers or whatever, or you can use nothing. That part is not necessary. But I really enjoy movements with my body. It helps me to create my intention and my energy. So creating that pentagram with my hand while I say my words makes me feel like I'm drawing in more energy. It's up to you. And then you can, you stand in that direction, you say your incantation, then you move to the next direction. In Wicca, in Gardnerian Wicca, you will move counterclock. North, east, I'm sorry. You will move clockwise through the directions, and then when you open your circle, you will move counterclockwise. Wow, brain fart. Anyway, so you will move clockwise. Now, there are different reasons to start in different directions based on different traditions. So in my tradition and the way that I practice Gardnerian Wicca, I typically tend to start in the north. I will start in the north, and I will go north, east, south, west. That is just, northeast, southwest. That's just how I do it. The reason that I do it that way is because I believe, okay, she did put a message in the chat. She had to go. Okay, cool. So I believe that first we exist. So first the cells exist. So first we are a cell. That is what all things on planet Earth started out as, was a cell or stardust, whatever you believe existed. And after that, after the existence of that cell, whether you're talking about a human developing and growing within the uterus, which you would start as a just clump of cells, or whether you believe that this extends all the way out to the universe, and that the universe all just started as a clump of stardust, or whatever it was, first we exist. That is our physical. First we are physical, which would be Earth. Then thought existed. So after you are a clump of cells, you have your very first thought when your brain is developed. Then after you think, you create action. So the action of being born, the action of the Big Bang, the action of whatever, there is an action, and that is fire. Fire is action, or the spark of life, the breath of life. So when you are born, or when the universe was born, and there is that big gigantic spark of action, or action potentials that spark within inside of your brain, the spark of a neuron, the spark of an action potential, all of those things, that is all fire. So first we are a cell, first we exist, then we think, then action happens, and then we feel. And then we have emotions about existing. And so that is earth, air, fire, water. North, east, south, west. Now, some traditions start in the east because that is where the sun rises. Totally cool. Some people start in the south because fire is, usually those are Fey traditions, because it is believed that the whole entirety of the universe started with fire, because you have the Big Bang, which was a gigantic force of, not really fire, because fire, you must have the fire on Earth, you must have oxygen, and therefore the Big Bang obviously was not the same fire that exists on the planet Earth. But anyway, fire being sun, fire being stars, fire being all of those things were the very first thing to exist within the universe. Also, the Fae are said to have come from smoke and fire. So in a lot of Fae traditions, you start in the south. Whatever you believe in, you can start wherever you would like based on the different traditions, but you go clockwise. And then to break down your circle, or what's called opening your circle back up, you go counterclockwise. So start in whatever direction you feel, say your incantation, go around clockwise and say all of your incantations, and then sit back down. Oh, and then when you open your circle, you will do the exact same thing, but the opposite direction. And then you start your ritual. Then when you open your circle back up, you will thank the directions for being there. So you will say a different incantation. So the very common one is, hail to the guardians of the watchtowers in the north, element of earth. Thank you for guiding us through our journey. Thank you for being a part of our circle. Hail and farewell. But like I said, you can write your own to say goodbye and to say thank you. Then you will move in the opposite direction, just like I explained. You will move counterclockwise, and you will blow out your directional candles. So like if you lit a candle for the south, you will blow out that candle. Thank the spirit using an incantation. We didn't quite go over the spirit. We will when I talk about altar creation. And then that's when you will blow out your middle candle, which will be for the spirit, if you chose to light candles for the directions and the spirit. And you will keep your spell candles lit. We will talk about what that means as well. Oh, I should have directed you to this page. I forgot I did this. Anyway, I gave you examples of all of the incantations. These are just the ones written in Gerald Gardner's book. And then this explains how to call in the directions, which I already explained to you. It says, face the direction that you are calling into your circle, hold up your wand, athame, or hands, say your incantation that welcomes the direction into your circle. Make sure that you welcome in the element that the direction represents, and you can write your own incantations for this process. So, are there any questions about that? We are definitely going to talk about it more in the next 30 minutes that we have of class, but are there any questions right now before I start discussing and talking about how to create your altar? All right. So we have the basic altar. Now, I really liked this picture, and the reason that I really like this picture is because I want to reiterate to people. So many people, I hear so many witches. I had the unfortunate, I love TikTok. And of course, my For You page, of course, is covered in all these witchy things because TikTok knows, just knows. And I hate it a little bit because TikTok witches make me so angry because they make it so extremely complicated. It's not supposed to be. These are indigenous traditions. These are traditions that have been around for thousands of years. These are traditions that some of the very first humans on the planet Earth had. They did not have access to herbs and arts. They did not have access to metaphysical bookstores. They did not have access to spend $50,000 on perfect tools for what. Anyway, I could go on a rant about this forever. So, your altar does not need to be this gorgeous, exquisite work of art that costs $400 and has a diamond statue of Isis on it. Like, I like this picture because your altar can just be beautiful cards that you made with north, east, south, and west, and the fire, and earth, air, fire, and water on them, with a couple flowers and crystals if you like, and a candle. It doesn't even have to be that. The only thing that your altar needs to have, or should have, is a representation for each element. And this is, remember, this is within Gardnerian Wicca. Obviously, when we get into different traditions, the altar is going to change a little bit. For Gardnerian Wicca, all you need is something that represents earth, air, fire, and water. And those things need to be placed in the north, east, south, and west. And something that represents the spirit. And the spirit can be anything that you think it is. It can be something that represents your soul. A lot of people associate the spirit with your soul, with the little part of you that isn't just neurons and sensory input and physical attributes. The part of you that is something more than that, the spirit can represent that. If you believe in the goddess, the spirit can be the goddess. If you believe in the fae, if you believe in dragons, if you, anything that exists on a different plane of existence is the spirit. Anything that does not exist within the spiritual world, anything that doesn't exist within the physical world, anything that is not just your physical composition is the spirit, and whatever you believe that is. And that goes in the middle of your altar. And you can throw in some extras. You can throw in something that represents the spell that you're doing. So if you are doing, like, let's take this picture for example. If you are doing a ritual for spring equinox, you can throw in some flowers. If you are doing a ritual or a spell to help you have good dreams, you could throw in a piece of amethyst. If you are doing a spell to help with studying for a test, you could throw in a notebook or a pencil or something that represents the subject of study that you are doing. If you are doing a spell to help your hair grow longer or to help make you feel beautiful, put on your altar a symbol that reminds you of beauty. That can be, the goddess Aphrodite, or it can be your hairbrush. Like, it can be whatever you would like. You can throw in some extras. And if you want to get real fancy, you can. You can make a gorgeous, beautiful altar covered in every single herb that represents the spell that you're doing, every single crystal that represents the spell that you're doing. You can make a shrine for water in the west and a gorgeous piece of artwork for the south. And you can get real fancy with it. Like, you can make your altar as gorgeous and fancy and beautiful, or as simple as you would like. The only things necessary are north, east, south, and west, the symbol a symbol for earth, air, fire, and water, and spirit, and one thing that represents the spell that you are doing. And I think that having a candle is a necessity, but that's just me. That's not something you have to follow. I really enjoy having a candle on the altar, and I usually put it in the space of fire, only because staring at a candle really helps me meditate. So I appreciate having that on the altar, because then when I do the part of the spell that involves introspection and meditation, I can stare into the fire, and it helps me to clear my thoughts because I have something to look at. And I really like looking at fire. And because it doesn't always work for me to just close my eyes, because I close my eyes and I start thinking about my to-do list and how I haven't messaged 19 people back. And if I look at fire, it helps me focus on something that is not the 5 million intrusive thoughts that I have going on in my head. So I like having a candle, but once again, completely up to you. So place the elemental items in each direction. I give you an example of what you can put on your altar for each direction. For north, in the symbol of earth, you can put things like stones, dirt, sticks, personal items, because remember, earth represents anything from the physical realm. So that can be, putting a very special sentimental blanket, or it can be putting any item, a ring, jewelry, anything that is kind of sentimental to you, that is a physical item. You can place metal, wands, plants, vegetables, herbs, crystals, seeds, pentacles, pine cones, acorns, pine needles, anything like that. And like I said, remember, you should never, if you would like to do a spell, you should be able to just go do a spell. You should never, ever, ever have to go to the store and buy something. If you need a specific herb, like a very specific herb, maybe you need to go to the store and buy that very specific herb. But also, so many things can be found outside. If you need a specific herb, try going to the foraging section of this website. It probably exists in your backyard. You probably just don't know that. It probably exists outside somewhere, especially if you live in a place like Colorado, where we have so much access to so many different types of herbs just outside, and you don't even realize it. Like, a lot of spells will call for rosemary, a lot of spells will call for mullein, a lot of spells call for roses. Wild roses, which are called primrose, exist all over Colorado. They probably exist in your backyard. You just don't know it, because primrose doesn't look like a big, gorgeous, beautiful red rose. It looks like teeny tiny little roses, and they exist all over Colorado. So if you don't have any money and you don't have the money to spend right now on your spell, go check out the foraging section of this website, and I bet you there are things that you could forage outside. And like I said, you can use a pine cone to represent earth. And then air, incense, fairy wings, feathers, swords, balloons, sage, but remember, not white sage, a book, journal, a memory of a loved one, a singing bowl. All of those are great for the east, or air. For south, for fire, you can put things like a candle, a jar of fire, which I think is so funny, but a lot of times I will take a mason jar, light incense or a candle or fire of some sort inside of it, and then put it out and close the lid, and now you have a jar filled with smoke, which not only represents fire, but also represents the fae. So you could use that for spirit as well. Or just putting a little tea light candle inside of a jar filled with water, or putting a little tea light candle inside of a mason jar and just putting it on the floor. And then if something happens, you don't light your house on fire because it tips over inside the jar. You can also, for fire, you can also use ashes, a picture of the sun, coal. Can also use carnelian, amber, citrine, garnet. Those are all crystals, by the way. Or anything handmade. So remember that fire is action. So it's passion, it's motivation, it's inspiration. So anything that you needed motivation to create is going to represent fire. a knife, a wand, things like that. The West, also, you will notice that, like, for instance, I put crystals for earth and a wand for earth and crystals and a wand for fire. I put very specific crystals for fire because very specific crystals represent fire, but remember that all of the elements are intertwined. It's not just that, you know, only a wand can represent earth. If you found a stick outside and that is your wand, it is a great representation for earth. But also, if you put tons and tons and tons of work and motivation and inspiration and effort and action into building your wand, it's a great representation for fire. All of them intertwine with each other. For water, you can put a jar of water, a bowl of water, moon water, a picture of the moon, snow, ice, lapis lazuli. It's a great crystal for water, aquamarine, opal, pearl, amethyst, selenite, seashells, or sand. And then for the middle, for the spirit, things to put on your altar are like the statues of the Fae, gods and goddess statues, black or white candles, pictures of gods and goddesses, pictures of dragons, pictures of the Fae, and pentacles. Cover your altar in items that represent what you are using it for. For example, a summer solstice altar should have fruits, flowers, vegetables, and leaves all over it. Like I said, the only requirement is that you have one of those things, but those things are really easy to find outside. So you can just find them outside and kind of cover your altar in them. When casting a spell, use a candle that is the color that represents the element you are working with. For example, when doing a luck spell, use a green, brown, or white candle. And you will place that on your altar. So for this, we are going to do another activity. I guess since Katrina is just listening, it's just going to be me and you, Amy, doing the activity. But if you have paper and a pencil next to you, I would love if you would draw a little altar, or even just write, just make a list. That's fine too. Just make a list of a spell you would really like to do and what you would do to decorate your own altar. What would you put in the north, east, south, and west and in the spirit? And what would you use to represent the spell? And then share it with me. And feel free to put it in the chat or to say it out loud. And I will be right back because once again, I have to pee. I swear, I pee so much. Anyway, I'll be right back. But work on your altar and then we can share. And I'll do one too, so I can share too. Okay, I'm so sorry. So here, yeah, I'll share first so you kind of have an example. I really enjoy right now doing beauty spells. And what a beauty spell is more of just a confidence spell. It's not necessarily about making you more societally beautiful based on societal standards. It's about being able to look in the mirror and think that you're beautiful and to know that you're beautiful and to have more self-confidence. And I've been working on that lately because it's something I really need to work It affects my mental health greatly. It shouldn't, but that's life. So a beauty spell is done, well, there are many ways to do it, but one of my favorite ways to do it is you take something that you put on your body every day. So I take my moisturizer because I like feel gross if I don't use moisturizer on my face every day. It makes me feel all dry and crusty when we live in Colorado, and I feel like I wake up and I feel dry and crusty every morning. So I take my moisturizer and I would put it on my altar, and you do the entire spell with your moisturizer sitting on the altar. And you do a huge spell, and I'll describe it. And then you use the moisturizer every day. And it's supposed to help build your confidence and help you see how beautiful you are when you look in the mirror. And I really like those types of spells. But so you take your moisturizer and you put it in the middle of the altar. And I would use, let's see, I like using primrose or even just rose on the altar. I like primrose because I can forage for it. And rose is a representation throughout history of beauty. I love my little statue that I have of Aphrodite, and I would put that on my altar to represent the spirit. To represent earth, I love using my wand. To represent air, I'm a neuroscience major, and I have this really beautiful little diagram. It's a necklace, but it's a diagram of the brain. And I love using it for my ritual work, not only because then I can wear energy that has been part of a ritual, but also because the brain represents analytical thought. And so I put that for air, as well as I have this little sword that I put for air as well. And for fire, I would probably just do a red candle and light it. And for water, I have a really pretty bowl, but it's like a singing bowl, but I fill it with water, and then I use the singing bowl thing to make the bowl vibrate and sing, and it vibrates with the water inside of it, and it makes me really feel like I'm adding a lot of energy into the water. So that's what I would use for earth, air, fire, and water. And then for my symbol of the spell, I would use primrose, and for the spirit, I would use Aphrodite. And I sit and I meditate on all of the things that I think are beautiful about my outer appearance and all the things that I really like about myself. There's more to the spell, but that's all I want you to share. And then that's it. That's all I want you to share. And then I use the moisturizer every day, and it helps me feel more confident about myself. So what's a spell that you would do, and what would you use for all the things?
So this one is, I have something in mind, but I don't know how to put it into effect. It would be for calming the spirit, because I don't have a lot of anxiety, but when I do have it, it's huge. So usually when that happens, I'll go and sit and read a book or something to get my mind off of it. So a book, I would like to incorporate a book in there somewhere. And then I know that lavender is a soothing incense. So, lavender would be in there somewhere. But that's about all I can think of at the moment. I like feathers, so somewhere maybe a feather.
Oh, that's perfect.
Feathers around.
Yes, you could put a feather in the east for air. Lavender could just go on your altar, lavender incense for part of the spell. And the book could also be placed in air or fire. What would you use for earth?
Probably either, I don't know. I mean, I'm weird because I like the feel of sand on my feet. So I could probably do that, but I also like the meaning behind pentacles. So
Yes, you could use both. That's great. Yes.
I
And
mean, is that all it is? It's just basically it's stuff that makes you that helps you get to the point where you're trying to get to. Is that so? There's like no right or wrong answer. It's just basically what you want it to be.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's just what you want it to be, and then using the representation. So like knowing what Earth represents, knowing what it symbolizes, and then picking what that means to you.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what would you use for water?
Well, aquamarine is my birthstone, so I'd probably find something that might have aquamarine in, at least for now. Like I'm sure that as I do this, I'll find, more meaningful meanings of things and, change things around. But I think, yeah.
No, that's perfect. Yes, that's awesome. And then, yeah, the book and the lavender for the purpose of the spell. What about for the spirit?
I think I keep it simple with like a white candle or a black candle,
Yes, that's awesome.
maybe decorate it with purple or something.
Oh, that is perfect. That would make such a beautiful altar and such a beautiful spell. Oh, that's wonderful. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. I love that. Okay, so now that you have your altar, it's all set up, and you have everything for each direction and for the spirit and your little symbol that represents the spell that you are working on, then starts the actual part of the spell and doing the spell itself. And when doing the spell itself, I think we're going to see here. Okay. Do we have time? What time is it? Okay, so we're briefly going to go over this part. So here we go. So
I'm following you along. Which one did you go to?
oh, awesome. So you go to Wicca. Here, it's right here. So you go to what is paganism / Wicca.
Okay.
And then
Magic.
yeah. And then under that one, you will see what is magic.
Okay.
So I start with what magic isn't. So it is obviously not a practice that uses powers derived from the devil. It isn't anti-religious or anti-God. It is simply non-religious, though it can be used in religious ways. But anyway, so how you start your spell. So if you scroll down to the goal of magic, as described above, magic is utilized to bring about needed change. The needed change is often termed the goal. The goal may involve love, protection, health, peace, prosperity, increased spirituality, psychic awareness, or other changes. The goal of magical rites should always be positive. So when I say it should always be positive, positive for you. Now, that can mean a lot of things. I think that, like I said, to preface all of this, there are no rules in Wicca. There is nothing wrong. There are no bad answers. There's no wrong answers. There is nothing that you can do that would make the gods angry. This is another reason I hate TikTok about witchcraft. Because witchcraft, as we all know, especially the ancient forms of indigenous practice, have been colonized for a very long time. And they were colonized mostly by people who believed in colonizing religions, such as Christianity, such as the Islamic faith, such as Judaism, such as Catholicism. And so all of those religions all have a list of bad things, things that you cannot do, things that will get you sent to hell, things that'll make the big God angry, things that Jesus wouldn't appreciate. All those things. Those are things that are all created by the colonizing religions. The reason that a lot of witches these days think that that's still something that exists within paganism is because of our influence from colonizing religions. Those things did not exist in most forms of paganism. Now, when you get into little niche parts of it, like, yeah, in Norse practices, there are things that'll get you into Valhalla. When you get into certain Greek practices, there are things that make Zeus angry. But a big thing you have to realize and remember, when you look at the gods that are not colonizing religious gods, so not the Christian God or the Catholic God or the Islamic God or the Jewish God or anything like that, when you look at the pagan gods, morality does not define spirituality. Things that make Zeus angry. We all have to remember that in the stories of Zeus, like Zeus raped 15 people. Zeus is a terrible man who did terrible things daily. The gods are not representations of morality. The gods,
Which you never hear in history books.
yeah, exactly, which is so frustrating. But the gods are not a representation of morality. They're just not. They're not meant to be like, look, you should be more like Zeus and Odin and Persephone and all these Norse, pagan, Greek, Italian, Celtic, any of the gods. They're not representations of morality in any sense of the word. So making Zeus mad is like not a bad thing. And because his sense of morality is ridiculous and it's not something that you need to follow. So there is no bad thing in paganism that'll get you sent to a bad place or that'll get bad karma put onto you. These are all ideas that were placed onto us by colonization. And so this idea of harm none, this idea of the threefolds over rule, those are all things that were added to pagan practices because people felt like they had to defend witchcraft not being evil. Because, as we know, pagan cultures were completely wiped off the face of the planet because of genocide, because of colonization. A lot of spiritual practices that exist during pagan time periods don't exist anymore. And it's very sad. And a lot of times to be able to defend the fact that we were not practicing the worship of the devil or we were not evil, those types of things were added. The threefolds over rule is not an ancient practice. It is something that was added so that we could say, look, we don't harm people, we're not evil. But we would have never been considered evil if there wasn't a colonizing religion that came and took us over and said that we're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z or else we're evil. So harming none is once again not a rule. It's just a suggestion. So is karma, just a suggestion and part of a certain specific practice. So is the threefolds over rule is just part of a specific practice and a suggestion. There are no rules. Now, do some people practice magic that involves harming others? Yes, they do. And that's the only reason that's considered evil is because of colonizing religions. The idea of duality is a huge aspect of ancient tradition, that for good to exist, there must be evil. Because if there is no bad, we would not know what good is. If you were never hungry, you would never know what satiation feels like. You would never know what it means to be full. If you were never sad, you would never know what it meant to not be sad. If you were never, duality is a big, gigantic part of a lot of pagan spirituality. So you need the bad for the good to exist, and you need the good for the bad to exist. So does that mean I am suggesting that you cause harm to other people? No. But I really like to reiterate that in pagan spirituality, evil and good are just two sides of the same coin. That's all they are. And some people practice harming none and some people don't, and that's fine. And some people practice karma and some people don't, and that's fine. It is all based on you and what you would like to do with your magic. And no god is going to harm you or be angry at you, because the gods of paganism are not standard bases of morality, nor do they have a choice in where you go when you die. Hades does not decide that you go to the underworld. There is no god that decides where you go, and there is no morality defined by your spirituality. So you do the spell however you want to do the spell. And if it causes you less anxiety, and your spell is about having less anxiety, and it causes you less anxiety to think bad thoughts about some girl that pissed you off, then think bad thoughts about some girl that pissed you off and curse her in your head and be angry, because anger is a human emotion that exists, and we are allowed to be angry, and we are allowed to be mad at people, and we are allowed to hate people, and we are allowed to do all of these things because they are human and they are natural and normal. And I am not suggesting that you like put a curse on her or whatever. I am just saying hate is a natural emotion, and hiding hate and pushing it down inside of us and pretending like the only thing we feel is light and love and happiness is just a lie. That's just a lie. No human on earth only feels light and love and happiness. We all feel anger and hate and anxiety and depression and sadness and all of these things, and they are human, and we are human. And we have to embrace being human, because we cannot be anything else. So, oh,
I'm dying over here. Perfect. I'm glad you're recording this.
right? And I'm recording. Yep, and it's so true. And I have like, whenever witches are all like, the only thing that exists is light and love and positivity and blah, 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 blah. That is bullshit. Okay, that's a lie. Because I promise you that Mrs. Light and Love and Happiness went through hate 7 times today. Because we all do. And there is no reason to lie and pretend you are not human and that you don't feel anger and sadness and upsetness and all of these things all day long, and that our magic can not only involve love and light, because being human is a part of magic, and part of magic is sitting there sometimes in your sacred, beautiful circle that you have created, that is filled with beautiful energy that you called in from the elements, so that you can like sit and hate Stacy. And that's okay. And that's fine. Because we all go through that, and pretending like we don't is silly. It makes no sense, and also makes other people feel bad. It makes other people feel like if they're not light and love, then that's causing bad things to happen in their life. If they aren't positive all the time, then they are like toxifying their life with bad thoughts, which is then, I've heard that so many times. It's like the power of intention, and that if you think bad thoughts, bad things are going to happen to you. That's ridiculous, Becky. Fucking we all think bad thoughts all day long. We all do it. It's all like, we all do that. And to think that bad things are going to happen to you because you thought bad things is ridiculous. And it also causes shame. And it causes other people to think something like crazy, like you're poor and live in poverty because you thought negative thoughts, and Chad is rich because he thought positive thoughts. That's ridiculous. It makes no sense, and that's silly. So
I think you pretty much just summed up every reason people have mental illness.
Right? So
and it's all because of colonized religion.
it is. It really is. And colonized religion, it forced us all to have so much shame and guilt about so many things. that are human. We feel shame and guilt for being human. And that was a very good control tactic.
Oh, that's all anything ever is about control.
Yep. And that's not what witchcraft should be. And I feel like all of this bullshit about love and light is, and this like power of attraction, and that you only, if you use the power of thought to only attract good things into your life, then you'll have a good life, is another form of control and shame. Because that means it's other people's fault when horrible things happen to them, and when illness happens, and when poverty happens, and even, things like racism and prejudice and all the horrible things like genocide that happen. And do people realize that they're like saying that the Holocaust happened because too many Jews thought bad things? Like, what? What? So this idea of the power of attraction is no, it's an idea that came on because of colonizing religion and control. No, not cool. And
Yep.
and that is, it's 9:06. So that is where we are going to end class today. Is on the fact that is stupid, and I'm very angry at modern witches sometimes. Because nobody should ever be shamed into thinking that because they didn't think positively enough or attract good things into their life, that that's why bad things are happening. That's just not true. And nobody should think either that if they had a bad thought about someone, because like you work in customer service and everybody is horrible to you, and so you had a thought about murdering Becky, that means that all of a sudden horrible karma is going to come upon you. No, you're human. You're allowed to be human. And does anybody have any questions? Or comments?
No. It was fun listening to everything, though. It was really cool.
Thank you.
Yes, I like this class very much.
Thank you so much. I'm glad. I feel like this becomes a debate among witches. So I'm very glad that you guys see and understand what I mean when I say that the power of attraction is bullshit, and that toxic positivity is a thing. Because I get that debate a lot. So I'm glad that you agree and that you understand. And that is the beginning too of learning about magic, is that we are all human, and to embrace the things about you that are human. Don't try to change into being something that is less human.
Can I quote you on that?
Yes.
That was beautiful.
Please do. Thank you. It's an Alex quote of the day. Awesome. I'm going to stop recording.